A very good morning to one and all present over here. I, Smrutisnigdha Rana from BCom first year, welcome you all to this presentation. So, people say home is where the heart is, but under the Income Tax Act, home is also where the income is. So let's decode income from house property. In this session, we will discuss how an assessee paid tax under the head of income from house property. So let's start. First, we will discuss about annual rental value. Annual rental value is the inherent capacity of the property to income. To calculate annual rental value, there are different items and these are the following. First one is municipal rental value. Municipal rental value is determined by the municipal authorities for the purpose of levying municipal taxes. Now the second one is fair rental value. Fair rental value is the rent that a similar property in the same or similar locality could fetch. Then the third one is standard rent. Standard rent is the maximum rent that a person can legally recover the money from a tenant under the Rent Control Act. Then the fourth one is expected rental value. Expected rental value is calculated as the higher of municipal value or fair rental value but restricted to the standard rent. Then the last one is actual rent received or receivable. This is the real money a person actually gets from a tenant, and the formula is actual rent minus unrealized rent. Now the question is, what is unrealized rent? So unrealized rent is a rent that a tenant supposed to pay but didn't. So unrealized rent can only be deductible from actual rent if we satisfy these following four conditions. And the conditions are: the tenancy should be genuine, the default tenant should have vacated the property, the legal owner of the property should have taken reasonable legal steps to recover the money, and the last one is the defaulting tenant should not occupy any other property of the same owner. Now let's get to gross annual value. Gross annual value is the starting point of calculation. It is essentially the expected rent or the actual rent received or receivable, whichever is higher. And next is, there are three steps for calculation gross annual value. So the step number one is, we have to compare the municipal rental value with the fair rental value. So whichever will be higher is compared to standard rent. So between the higher value with the standard rent, whichever is lower is our expected rental value. Now the step 2 is, if actual rent received or receivable is more than the expected rental value, then such rent is our gross annual value. Then the third step is, if actual rent received or receivable is less than the expected rental value, then the expected rental value is our gross annual value. Now let's get to net annual value. Net annual value is the value that arrived after the deduction of municipal taxes from the gross annual value. Here is the note is, municipal taxes are only be deductible if they were borne and paid by the owner during the previous year. Now let's get to deemed ownership. In some cases, even if you are not the legal owner on the paper, but the income tax department treated you as the owner. For example, if you lease a property more than 12 years, you will be treated as the deemed owner. Now let's get to statutory deduction under section 24. Once the net annual value is calculated, the law allowed two deductions to reach income from house property. And those are, first one is standard deduction under section 24 subsection A. A flat deduction of 30% of net annual value is allowed for repairs and maintenance. And the second one is interest on borrowed capital under section 24 subsection 2. Here there is two conditions. First one is, for let out property, there is no maximum limit on the interest deduction. Second condition is for self-occupied property. The deduction is allowed limited to 2 lakh if the loan was taken for purchase or construction, or rupees 30,000 if the loan was taken for repairs. So if the loan was taken for repairs, purchase, constructions, reconstruction or etc., the interest on loan is deductible. So this concludes my presentation, and I hope I was able to clear the concept and make it interesting for you all. Thank you so much.